A very warm evening, everyone. I am Rohan, a Master of Business Administration student from IIT Bombay, and I'll be your host for this session. Now we'll be having the fireside chat session of eConclave with one of our most esteemed guests for this event, Dr. Gaurav Garg. The topic for this session will be how to start your entrepreneurial journey. Dr. Gaurav Garg is a doctor by qualification and an entrepreneur come educator by choice, who is aiming to narrow educational disparities in the country. After earning his bachelor's degree in dental surgery from the College of Dental Surgery, Manipal, he opted to enroll for a master's degree in mass communication from MICA, Ahmedabad. And it's while pursuing the master's that the desire to be an entrepreneur got seated firmly in his mind. After gaining some experience as a verbal ability educator at time in 2014, he decided to start his own venture. Just in the following year, he founded Study IQ Education, an online education platform that is aiming to help lakhs of Indian students prepare for exams. And over the years, Study IQ has grown to be one of the biggest online study portals for competitive exams in the country. When he is not at work, he loves reading and playing chess. His first book, Safalta Ki Raah, which is on the stands now, has also helped him realize his dream of becoming a writer. He's an inspiration for all the budding entrepreneurs in the nation. I welcome you, sir, for eConclave 2021 on behalf of IIT Bombay and everyone who has joined us for this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. When I was a little bit younger, I wanted to be known as a person who needed no introduction. So that was a very long introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. And as the moderator for this discussion, we have with us Ms. Kanchan Dwivedi. Ms. Kanchan, a flight lieutenant veteran and a Stanford alumna, is the founder of Loan Guinea gives small, personal, and unsecured loans to salaried millennials. They also conduct financial awareness webinars for corporate and startup employees in Bangalore. She also mentors IIT Bombay entrepreneurship students at Desai City School of Entrepreneurship. I'd like to welcome ma'am, and now I'd like to hand over the reins to you for carrying forward this session.
Thank you, Rohan. First of all, let me, congratulate Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management for a wonderful sessions which I attended yesterday also and today. It's been stellar speakers, one after the other. I don't know who to say was the best, but definitely I would say this particular session, though it is the last, I think this is really a gem waiting to be discovered. And I hope all of the people, the students, the wannabe entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs, take away something from this session that I'm going to have with Dr. Gaurav Garg. Dr. Gaurav Garg, welcome to our eConclave. And, there's so many questions that, I have today when I was going through your profile. And, so just, try beginning with the first question that, you started off with doing dental surgery. And, then you've done your MBA. And then, looked at entrepreneurship, started off in 2014, I think with time, and then you left the job and decided that you wanted to be a full-time entrepreneur, started in 2015. So, just help us understand, how was that journey like? Was it always pre-planned that you're going to be turning entrepreneur even during your dental surgery days, or was it later on that you decided that this was going to be your passion?
So thank you, Kanchan, again for the warm welcome. No, nothing was pre-planned. When I wrote my pre-medical test, today we call it NEET, NEET. Those days it used to be known as pre-medical entrance, PMT exam basically, which is an exam that you need to clear to become a doctor. You need to clear that exam. And I cleared that exam, I got dentistry. And when I started pursuing it, I realized that this is not my calling, so to say. And I always preferred a non-clinical career. Now during, I went to the course with an open mind, but when I was pursuing it, there were some subjects which I liked, there were some which I didn't like. And the ones I liked were more often than not, they were non-clinical subjects, like oral pathology, like something which required academia more than interacting with the patients. So then I realized that this is something that I would not want to do. And now I started looking for alternate careers. Of course, I finished my graduation. And then I thought about maybe going to research, and I just figured out what were the available options for me. And then I, just to diversify my skill set, I did my MBA. And even after doing my MBA, I was recruited from my college directly to a company, which now, as destiny might have it, I was not among the top in my batch, and I was recruited in a startup. Now, I'm sure even today, everybody wishes to be recruited in a top company like the Coca-Cola or Google or of something of that nature. But I was recruited in a startup, and when I went to the startup, I just realized that this is something that even I can do. Like because in startup I got immense freedom. I used to talk to the founders every day, and I just thought that I just tried to find out what was my passion. Now, one of the most difficult things is to find out which is your passion, because entrepreneurship is something that is so difficult and so unforgiving, and it's also very long before you get any tangible results. So if that is not your passion, you won't be able to survive in it for long, because you'll give up. It's like a marathon. You have to love a marathon to win a marathon. You can win a sprint even without liking a sprint, but to be an expert in marathon, you have to love, because there is every day so much running, there's so much practice. So if you don't have a love for running, then you cannot win a marathon. So my idea was, I'll find out what I like, and then I've always loved teaching. Basically, even when I was in dentistry, I used to teach my friends. Even when I was preparing for PMT, I used to teach my friends. And I just thought that maybe what if I can become a teacher? And then I started working on it. I made up my mind that, okay, I will not go back to job now. I quit my job. I did not search for any other job. And then came a long struggle after that. I started teaching for free. I started teaching free for very less price. And finally, I started then Study IQ in a very small shop, in a very, very small shop in Lajpat Nagar, with just one board, in a very traditional setting, like a conventional setting. And yeah, that's how the journey went. But nothing was pre-planned, nothing.
Right, right. Pretty much, from your experience, I can also, I can relate to it, because, I also looked at Loan Genie, not immediately starting Loan Genie immediately, but over a period of time, one thing led to another. And so it was just that I just connected the dots, and then discovered that this is what I wanted to do when I wanted to start with Loan Genie. So actually, one thing is, Dr. Gaurav, actually, I can sense that a lot of people in the audience today, who are in the final year, who are just about to graduate, maybe take up a job, they are facing this dilemma that, should I join this wonderful established company, or, should I start up on my own, or should I even start working in a startup too, in order to just to understand, कि भैया startup hota kya hai? What is this startup all about? So what would your advice be to these, students who are in the final year?
Yeah. So Kanchan, sometimes we don't have the courage to start up immediately. And even I did not have the courage, to be honest. I gained that courage. I learned the ropes. I partnered with my co-founder, who gave me a lot of confidence. So there are a lot of things that go into making that the most crucial step, because that's what matters. Because if you don't take that first step, you'll never be able to become an entrepreneur. What I would suggest, if I were of their age now, I'm 7 years hence my pass out. If I was in 2014 when I passed out, what I would do is I would take a startup with ESOPs. I think that is I consider it as a middle ground. Like, for example, there is a middle ground between a job and a startup, which is that when you have a job with ESOPs, you are in a way kind of a pseudo entrepreneur, because you grow as the company grows, and you have a system around you to help you, to support you. So I would call it like a pseudo entrepreneur, because, okay, today people want to go to Amazon, they want to go to Google. But if you go to Amazon, if you go to Google, the problem with such a big setup is that you are limited in your scope, because these companies, they have a very specialized person for everything. So if you go to Amazon, for example, chances are you may get paid very well, but you will be paid very well for doing something that is well below your talent. You will not feel like, okay, this was my calling. You are sitting in a cabin, okay, you are getting good pay, but you will not feel that your potential is being realized. And therefore, I would suggest them not to go for big companies if at all they have entrepreneurial dream. But I would not say that you have to become an entrepreneur just for the heck of it, or if just because it is glamorous to write CEO or something like that. Even Satya Nadella is a job person only. Even Sundar Pichai is a job person only. So you can become very successful by doing well in jobs, you know. So it is very, very important for you to make the right choice. And I think the right choice is, if I were in their footsteps, then what I would do is I will take up a job, but with ESOPs.
Right, right. So, you would just very briefly mention about, the advantages of working for a startup that you discovered. So, are there anything further that you would like to delve upon? And also wanted to understand, are you looking at hiring people in your startup, or you're just done with all the hiring that is there? And what kind of people do you look out for when you actually want to hire?
We are a team of 180 now. So we have recruited from IITs also. We have recruited from IIT Bombay itself. In fact, our CTO is from IIT Mumbai. And the guy who's managing our website is from IIT Mumbai. So we have recruited from top IITs, IIMs. We have been able to attract talent. One big advantage of working for a startup is you get to do a lot of tasks. You obviously you should be passionate about it. You should be having a bit of energy, you know. Now I can't stress on it enough, because it's hard to put this word into context, energy, because we assume that, okay, if we are young, then we'll be energetic, but thing is not like that. I think there is a certain level of energy which we have. And because in a startup, you can't go with the mindset that, okay, you'll come at job at 11 and you'll leave at 5 or 6 or 7, something like that. The willingness to learn is not there in everyone. This I've realized. The curiosity to learn, if you are very hungry, I think there are a lot of opportunities in a startup to learn which are not present at all in big companies. In fact, big companies will really limit your scope to learn, because a lot of time will be in activities which you may not like. You know, you will have to attend conferences, and I know that there might be some learning in those conferences or something of that nature, but it will not add much value to your skill set. Maybe you learn a bit of soft skills and all, but in entrepreneurship, I think it's more about putting a team together. It's more about leadership. So those leadership skills you'll get only by getting your hands dirty.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is such a good insight into the kind of people that you have discovered work really well, especially in early stages in a startup. So I was also wondering about your co-founder, Abhishek Jain. So, Dr. Gaurav, please help me understand that, because there are a lot of, again, people wanting to start up, maybe they've decided, maybe they have co-founders today. But what are the skills or qualities that you should look out for in a co-founder? Because let's say for Lone Genie, I'm also looking for a tech teammate. And, so I am also very curious about how should this person be that you have to deal with day in and day out? And, so could you shed some light on that?
Yeah. So Kanchan, here is a bit of a dilemma, because I have a very different way of thinking about it. And I have realized that most of the entrepreneurs I've talked to, they have a very different way of thinking about it. So for example, you just said that you are looking for a tech co-founder. Now, how I would go about is not like that. For me, co-founder is a much, much bigger person than a designation. For example, like when I was pursuing dentistry, I draw an analogy, right? I don't know whether I'll be successful in drawing, but okay, let me try. So when I was in dentistry, some people were specializing into, let's say, orthodontia. Orthodontia is related to where you put wires to straighten up the teeth, right?
Okay.
And some were specializing into, let's say, prosthodontia, where you replace a set of teeth with a prosthesis. So there was this school of thought that if you have to find the right partner, then a prosthodontist should find an endodontist or a orthodontist, because they have a different skill set. And it's more pragmatic, maybe it's more rational than, I am not an entrepreneur who is very pragmatic. I am more of a leap of faith kind of a person, right? And I don't necessarily, I would not put a tag on the co-founder. For me, if I have to find a co-founder, I'll just see whether my views match with his. So whether he's like me in many ways, whether he has a calm mind, whether he is, because it's very easy, and then there are a lot of fights always, because you are a smart person, the other person is a smart person. Obviously there'll be fights, so how he handles those moments, how, all those things are much more important. I think today we are looking at a very large talent pool in India, and all the talent pool is hireable. So for me, if I would not go for someone with a different skill set as a co-founder. That is not the criteria for me, at least. That is why I'm always in this dilemma, because when I talk to people, almost everyone has this thing that, okay, I'm not good in tech, so let me have a tech co-founder. So that is not how I look at it. So when I met Mr. Abhishek, I realized that he's very honest. He's very, very hardworking. He was very, very similar to me in a lot of qualities which were non-negotiable for me. He was very ethical, for example. All these things mattered more to me. And then we started, and we started because now of course he had a different skill set to me also. So that came as a bonus, but that was not the reason for selecting him. So for example, I used to take verbal ability as a subject. I used to teach general knowledge as a subject, and he used to teach maths and reasoning as a subject. So when we started off, we did not have to spend on hiring teachers,
right?
Because we taught different subjects. We only had expenses, like, for example, like real estate, or hiring some personnel to to take care of our small coaching center in Lajpat Nagar. And eventually that startup didn't work. Like, the offline setup didn't work. We ran it for 2 years. We were not making any money. We were not in loss, but we were not making any money. Hardly 2 to 3% of profits were there. And we were just doing it. There was an opportunity cost. Of course, there was an opportunity cost. In the prime of our youth, we were running the startup. And then we shifted online, where we got success. So there is only so much you can see through. There is only so much you can discuss and analyze. And nobody is that clairvoyant enough to see everything. The journey, there will always be roadblocks which did not even exist now, but they will come in near future. So for example, when we started online, this thing today that, okay, you can raise heavy funding and you can outdo others easily in a small amount of time, did not exist. But today, I mean, everybody's raising big funds, and they are trying to kill the smaller startups. So all of these were challenges that we found out along the way.
Very interesting. Yeah. So sorry, please go ahead. You were saying?
Yeah, so I was saying that as long as you two people are together in it, you will see through all these challenges, even with similar skill sets, or even with but you have to be together as a person. You have to respect each other as a person. You have to have that warmth, that love, that compassion for each other. You have to be honest. You have to be ethical. So just see what works for you. For me, it worked. For someone else, something else may work, but I can only suggest what worked for me. So I would not, I mean, obviously it is good if you have different skill set, but that will not be the criteria to select a co-founder.
Okay, that is so insightful, because a lot of the times this is what we hear, but you are insisting more on shared values, and values such as very good ethics, because that is also very critical to me as well, because I strongly believe in operating very ethically. And people like Narayan Murthy and the Infosys founders, Chris Gopal Krishnan, they all inspire me, because they have managed to build up this whole startup, and now a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, just on the basis of ethics. So that gives you a lot of hope in India that you can do such things. And you are another example who strongly believes in ethics. So this is so comforting to know that there are people who are successful in India, and they are very ethical. So very inspirational, I think, for all of us here today. So going forward, actually, you mentioned about the funding part of it, and how a lot of the people are getting heavy funding today in the market. So I just also wanted to understand, in 2019, Google, their YouTube program, they wanted to promote good content on YouTube, and they basically they chose you as one of the basically the startups. So just help us understand the whole process of selection with Google, and also how was the process like when you underwent that program, or whatever session that they had. How is your experience being working with Google, and what would you basically advise people who are looking for funding?
So how Google selected us, I'm not privy to those conversations, those algorithms that they followed or whatever they did. But they selected us for a small grant. We are not funded by Google. We just got a little bit of grant that gave us a little bit of breathing room in a very difficult time, I would say. But other than that, I think we have held on our own. We have paid our own bills. We have not raised any funding. We are a bootstrapped company.
Right.
And we have been profitable from day one. Although
Right.
in the initial stages, the profit was very less. Now, of course, as the company grew bigger and bigger, our scale increased. We hired more people. We had more profits. But Google gave us a very little grant that helped us. That's all.
Okay. So, so this is wonderful to know, that, you were going through a tough time, but yes, of course, there was a, little grant which came along, but you are a bootstrap company, profitable from, day one. Absolutely wonderful to know. So, going forward, like, in the future, are you, also, you planning to be a bootstrap for a long time, or, are there any other plans that you can share with us?
So here's a bit of a good news that just last month we got acquired. We got acquired by a big company, a bigger company.
Wow.
Yeah. And in fact, just yesterday we had that party, where the acquisition party. So now
Wow.
we have been acquired. I now looking forward to working with the parent company, because I will hold a significant amount of stocks in that company also. It's both a cash and stock deal. And I am also now investing in early stage startups. And I'm again doing it through a venture fund which invest heavily in IIT Bombay based startups. And IIT Delhi based startups. So yeah, I'm looking forward to helping the emerging entrepreneurs, mentoring them, advising them, and in my own way, how we can, even among all of this noise, how with a calm mind we can find our own purpose. And that's what I'm looking forward to now.
Wow, congratulations, Dr. Gaurav, to you, to Abhishek Jain, to all of your team who's worked so hard. And I would call this breaking news, because it is not there in the media. So I think, Entrepreneurship Club, Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management, please put this there on, banners out there that Dr. Gaurav Garg, the Study IQ team has been acquired. There, he's joined, he's looking to invest in startups. I think this is amazing news that you want to give back also to the ecosystem after, having reached such heights of success. So, more power to you, more success to you when you do that.
Thank you, Kanchan. In fact, our press release will come on Monday, and we'll go to the media on Wednesday. We have planned some media interactions in the coming week. So yes, this is definitely a breaking news for as long as, as far as this ecosystem is concerned.
Sure, absolutely. I would urge the, Shailesh J. Mehta team to take advantage of this and be one of the first ones to get the bites from you, because I think you have a number of people from IIT Bombay as well. So I think, you are nearly a part of IIT Bombay as well. So, Dr. Gaurav, going on to other questions that I had. What I was reading up about Study IQ was that you have, you have been awarded with the Diamond Play button, and then, you've got a subscriber base of 10 million people today, which is a huge number. It is not something that, you can be, scoffing at. It's a big number, not, very easy to reach there. So, and just prior to pandemic, your basically subscriber base was a certain number, and then during the pandemic, there was a change. So, also wanted to understand, what, first of all, it wouldn't have been really easy, like any other business, to go through the pandemic. So what are the changes, that basically challenges that you faced during the pandemic, and how did you overcome them to reach a stage of, let's say 10 million viewers, subscribers today?
So Kanchan, I don't think pandemic posed any challenge to us. In fact, pandemic assisted us in many ways. And we were growing very fast even before the pandemic. Pandemic merely might have accelerated it for 2-3 months. We
Right.
did not, and I know that a lot of my friends who are co-founders in EdTech only, they have had a decline during the pandemic because, for example, if somebody is into assessment, which means test series business, then there are no tests. So because students buy tests just 1 or 2 months before that, before they have to take an exam to test their preparation. So if there are no tests, then obviously their business will tank. And some of my friends have lost huge business during the pandemic, but some were assisted also. So we were among those who were assisted by the pandemic. And because we sell online video courses and coaching centers were closed, that helped us. But I saw no any significant increase to say that pandemic assisted us in ways which kind of completely shifted the paradigm for me. Yes, pandemic assisted us in a way that YouTube got more views, more subscribers maybe. But then we already had 9 million, 8 million subscribers. And today we have 11 million subscribers. This week we hit 11 million. So that gives us a lot of confidence and it saves a lot of money because there's a lot of inbound traffic that we get. There's a lot of word of mouth that we get. So it saves a lot of marketing money. In fact, our marketing spend is next to nothing. This is in sharp contrast to if you see the EdTech players who would sponsor cricket teams today, and they will have a sales battery of like 20,000 people to just go after people. And I mean, it's in sharp contrast to that. We grow only by word of mouth. We grow only by our performance, and that really helps. So I think this is also one of the learnings that I would share, that have a place where you can have inbound traffic, or you can at least touch those touch points where your target audience is there. That will help you save a lot of money, and money saved is money earned, as they say in startups, because every penny that you spend is critical if you are a bootstrap startup. So I think we don't burn cash. We don't have that DNA, to be honest. In fact, I had so many offers of acquisitions. I had at least 6 offers, including the big 2 in EdTech.
Wow.
But I did not go with the biggest and the second biggest. I went with someone else because I don't have that DNA that I have to. I still have that DNA of a teacher. If a teacher has to spend money to kind of get students, I don't think he's a good enough teacher. So I still have that DNA where I will do things in the organic manner. Of course, or inorganic always helps, but I'm essentially an organic person. I've been that through and through.
Wow. This again, you're very true to your ethics, and that you believe in growing very organically and not the advertising blitzkrieg that we see going on. Because as per some of the reports, BCCI basically was set to earn 3,500 crores as advertising revenue from IPL 2021. And another of the report that I was reading had was suggesting that Dream11 had paid as much as, it is like estimated 222 crore for bagging the sponsorship rights for basically IPL 2020 season. So if you're spending like close to 200 crores for bagging the sponsorship rights, I mean, we can imagine how much of a money is required basically to get the eyeballs of the people for the brand recall and things like that. And so, which is quite admirable that that you are smaller startup, bootstrap startup, and yet you're kind of standing up to the Goliaths by being organic, by looking at very good content and looking at word of mouth to kind of grow your audience. And it's not like you haven't been growing. You have definitely, like you mentioned, the pandemic aided you, and you ended up with 11 million today. Last I heard, I read was 10 million somewhere, but you're talking about a 11 million subscriber base. So it does show that, you're growing. This brings me to the other question of, the kind of eyeballs that others are getting. Do you think that is sustainable vis-a-vis the kind of strategy that you have, wherein you're going through word of mouth, people who really love your product and they are, kind of recommending it to others. And that way, if somebody that I trust, that there's a friend I trust a lot or respect a lot, or maybe my teacher, and they say, okay, go in for study IQ. And then I'm likely to, stick on to study IQ more because my whole circle of friends who I trust and respect are on study IQ. And I'm not very easily going to be leaving, let's say, a startup like study IQ. So what are your views about, the sustainability or this viewer or the subscriber stickiness as far as, spending big bucks versus organic acquisition is concerned?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I think jury is out on it because something of this nature in edtech has not been seen before. Where, okay, there are some companies which are spending big and there are some companies which are growing at their own pace. Consolidation has started a little bit. I think the big two have acquired 20 companies in the last 1 year. But apart from that, I think there is no significant market share that they have captured. In fact, the big two players in my segment, they have captured only 3% market share. And therefore, we can grow. It's not a zero-sum game, therefore. You can grow at your own pace. And I think it also depends on how much patience you have. And I think we are not, we don't have any such, these aspirations that, okay, we have to be a unicorn or a decacorn or a lexicon, or we don't see things from that perspective. We don't, I mean, necessarily it's not our dream to be on some cover of a magazine or something of that nature, that we have to chase this and therefore we have to show unsustainable growth or a growth that we cannot sustain. I think we are very comfortable in our growth. We have been able to withstand the onslaught of competition of these big giants, well-funded, hyper-funded giants. I won't even call them giants because it's like an inflated balloon, one prick, and that one prick is when the next round of funding stops. And they are done. And we have at least 90% of the startups going bust, all well-funded. So I think we have to have faith in the way we do business. We have to have faith. You can grow the Zerodha way also. They are bootstrapped, they are making money, they are profitable. And you can grow in a very different way like Swiggy or Zomato maybe. You burn cash, to each his own. But jury is still out. Whether these players can finish us or finish sustainable enterprises, I don't think so. I think there is enough room for everyone to grow in their own way.
Oh, that is comforting to know that there's plenty of space for everyone to grow with different business models and different thrusts basically in the organization. So
I think to add to my point, the perception of threat is always stronger than the threat. And if you don't have a calm mind, if you have a thin skin, I think you will kind of you will think, okay, let's raise funding, otherwise that particular person will kill my startup or he'll poach all my talent, and what will I be able to do? I think that confidence comes from the way you run business. And if you run your business the way you want and you get success, I think your confidence increases. There is no reason why I have to be worried about a rival company raising $1 billion. Sure, they are raising $1 billion, all the best to them. They'll do business their way, I'll do my way. And now a big company, well-funded company has acquired me. Maybe now I have to change the way I do business. There'll be a lot of marketing now, sales and all those things. But essentially the values, even when I was offered by 5 companies, I chose this company because again of those shared values that I chose my co-founder for. So nothing has changed insofar as my way of looking at life is concerned.
Right. Absolutely, Dr. Gaurav. I think what I can understand is like if the basics, the fundamentals are strong, if you agree with the basic values, is what is the way you go about making your decisions, that the things that you cannot compromise on, are they the same with the other person? And then you make your decision. I think that's a very wonderful way of going about taking a decision, because there are things which you can compromise on, and there are things which you would never go against. So definitely it is very useful to have that framework for decisions. I was also trying to understand, like, you have been a teacher, you have a passion for teaching. So, like, how does it feel like, when people reach across to you? Can you share some examples where when people reached out to you and let you know how you study IQ or you change their lives? Could you share some examples with us?
Well, it's almost every day that we receive such mails, such on social media, that I have been selected in this and this exam. Thank you for your course. And 90% of these messages are for free content. So that gives us a lot of satisfaction that whatever we put on YouTube is actually useful, and it's not merely serving as a masala to gain subscribers. It's actually useful. Only then people themselves, they approach you. This year, for example, Anand Patil, who is a visually challenged person, he cleared IAS. He has just become IAS just the last week. He has been allotted IAS services. He was our student. He was our paid student. There are thousands of such stories which we put out every day on social media. So we have been able to create this impact only through good quality content. I think one major problem with edutech players these days is they have all become tech, and that edu part seems to have kind of taken a backseat. I think this is one problem which edutech companies are facing, that they are putting out a lot of courses, they are putting out a lot of content, but then they're focusing more on the scale and other things, and that soul of education has kind of taken a backseat. That is why they have to spend so much on marketing. Now, why would you want a Virat Kohli or a Sachin Tendulkar to endorse your academic products? And why should students buy a course because Virat Kohli is endorsing it, is what I want to ask. Now, just the day before yesterday, one edutech company made Anil Kapoor as their brand ambassador. Now, my question is, what does he have to contribute in that? Okay, it's one thing to make Professor C.N.R. Rao your ambassador, but what is Anil Kapoor giving the students, with full respect to him? If I were a student, why would I buy a course just because Sachin Tendulkar is endorsing it? So I think this happens when you realize that somewhere you are losing ground, somewhere you don't have a strong enough product that stands on its own merit. And these are, I think, cosmetic approaches to education. I don't think they are solving any problem. Yes, they may earn revenue, they may sell a lot of courses, but I don't think they are solving a problem.
Wow. I was just about to ask you your views on influencer marketing, and you answered that question by, talking about Virat Kohli and Sachin Tendulkar, Anil Kapoor. Yeah. So I understand, what and how do you approach the whole area of influencer marketing. So, if there is a teacher who is, a real celebrity, then, you feel that, it makes sense to get that person and advertise about him or her. But yeah, sure, absolutely.
I do believe in influencer marketing, provided our students are influencers.
Right.
Our meritorious students are our influencers, and that is what is the word of mouth.
Right. So very, authentic way to have influencer marketing, and people who have really benefited. You mentioned, Mr. Patil, who is visually challenged. Yeah. I think this is such a wonderful example that you have shared with us. How much of a good this is doing to the all of India, the second tier, third tier towns, and so that brings me to this question, Dr. Gaurav. During the pandemic, are there any things which really surprised you about your audience? Because I do know majority of your audience is it true that was it coming from outside of metros? And like, what changed basically during the pandemic, and then now how is it changed again?
Mm-hmm. See, there's only one difference which I would say I noticed during the pandemic, which is that I found out that a lot of people who don't even wish to write any exam, they watch our content. So for example, अभी ये इतने लोग मेरे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, 300 लोग जुड़े हुए हैं, और आई एम श्योर ये किसी भी उस एग्जाम की तैयारी नहीं कर रहे हैं जिसकी हम तैयारी करवाते हैं, लेकिन ये भी स्टडी आई क्यू देखते हैं, just to keep themselves updated, so this is what I call the new age aspiration. Nobody has time these days to watch a news channel, those Hindu-Muslim debates of 1 hour where an anchor shouts through the roof and all of these very shallow debates. So that is where we step in, and we are not just an academic channel now, we are a new age alternate media, even though we did not intend to. So today, 50% of our views are coming from people who are not even preparing for any exam.
Oh.
And that is the behavior. So, and we cater to them. We therefore upload a lot of consumable content for them. So for example, we, for the last 1 year, we have been adding animations to the videos. We have been hiring voiceover artists to make the content more entertaining. We upload not just academic videos now, we also upload education information videos, which may not be exam relevant, but we have to keep a balance, because to serve to those people who see us as alternate media, we cannot wish away our hardcore academic oriented students who eventually pay for our content and keep the company alive and thriving. So that balance is very, very important. So we would upload a video, for example, like if a whale engulfs you, what will happen to you? Now that is not academic content, right? Or what will happen if you fall into a volcano's mouth, something. Now this is interesting educational content, but this is not academic exam going content. Exam going content would be like types of volcanoes or something like that. So we cater to ordinary public as well. Now some say that you can start your own TV channel. Some say you can start your own OTT or DTH or something of that nature. We are thinking on those lines. As of now, we have not finalized anything, but this is one change we did during the pandemic. We uploaded a lot of content which was non-academic in nature, but yet it was educational, but not academic.
Oh, okay. This is so interesting to know that, that there's all this difference between, the types of volcanoes. Maybe there's not so much of audience versus, what if you actually end up landing inside a volcano? So a lot of entertainment also. You're not making it a boring, 3 types of volcano kind of a video, but you're, actually bringing in the thrill, the adventure of, what if you actually are inside one. So making it very...
I would add one more thing here. Just because you're a very good teacher doesn't mean you'll be a very good YouTuber. Never make that assumption or a mistake. And I know a lot of teachers who had that time, a lot of experience, much more than me, much more knowledge than me, much more, they were much more armed with knowledge and experience, but they were not able to survive on YouTube. You have to study YouTube like a science. So when I opened the YouTube channel on 22nd of June 2015, I learned YouTube like anything. I learned everything, how to put tags in the video, how to put title, which is the best title, how to make a thumbnail. I watched videos of people who were YouTube experts like Steve Dotto, Tim Schmoyer, Darrell Eves. I used to watch their videos like 10 hours a day. And I used to implement those learnings on YouTube. So just because you are a good teacher, you have to learn the ecosystem in which you are present. And I know a lot of teachers who were doing great in offline setting, but they have not been able to replicate that same, the same thing online.
Right.
So this is also, and I learned everything from scratch. This is not taught in colleges, MBA colleges, how to do well on YouTube, or how to make thumbnail, or how to put a title, or how to make playlist, and all these things are not taught. A lot of it is learning and not complaining, and just keep on learning and how keep yourself making better.
Wow. So again, there's so much of learning in what you've just shared with us through a story, which is, you have to also got to be a learner and, not assume that you have arrived and you basically, don't need to do anything anymore. You went through these and learned all about YouTube, though you are a founder. So basically, you really don't need to do that. You can actually have some people, kind of doing it for you. But then, in which case, the strategy, when you're deciding on the strategy on what to do, what not to do, wouldn't, shine through basically. If you just left it to, one of your teachers to basically understand or, lead the whole effort. So you made it a point to, actually delve deep. You're a learner, not complaining about learning new things, because you stumble when you're learning new things all the time. You basically cry. You think that why am I doing this to myself? So quite amazing, actually, so much to learn for everyone on the program. So I was also trying to understand there's this question of piracy of content, or people kind of duplicating your content. So how have you handled that problem in India?
Okay, so in 2017, there was this one person who was very talented. He kind of hacked all our content, put it on torrent and all of these. He blackmailed us into giving some money to him. In fact, he asked very specifically for 1 Bitcoin. That time it was around, I think, 10 lakh rupees or something like that. We refused to, even entertain his email. He had emailed.
Wow.
And a lot of our content is shared in Telegram groups and all of these unregulated apps, which we cannot control, to be honest. There is only so much that we can do. If somebody will pirate, then he will pirate, right? But my thing is that those were not they will never buy your courses in any case. It's not about how much price you charge for your content. It's about that thought. I know people who won't even pay 5 rupees. I know people who will spend 1,000 rupees just like that on anything. But if an app is put a price for $1, they will not buy that app. They will look for free options. I think it's just about that psychology. I think it's just about those people will never buy your course in any case. So if your content is getting pirated, it is only reaching those people who would never buy your course again, but it will not hinder those who would buy. So today, which web series is not pirated? Tell me. All the series on Netflix, everything on Hotstar, everything is there in these Telegram groups and all of these. But does that stop Hotstar or Netflix from growing? I think there is only a very small percentage of people who actually look for do these unscrupulous things, and I think majority still I think they pay, and and also you have to design your offering in such a manner that the pirated content becomes useless. You keep updating your content, you keep adding new content. So for example, now we are not selling video courses alone. We give PDFs with that. We give test series with that. We give assignments. We give the crux of that material. We give the past papers questions with that. It's essentially a whole package. So if you pirate our videos, then essentially you have got only 10 to 20% of the material.
Right.
So you design your offering in such a way that even if it is pirated, it keeps getting updated. There's a lot of dynamic content you keep adding every day. And that's how you beat piracy. We have never been troubled by piracy, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, that is so comforting to know that, in spite of, some shady attempts to kind of intimidate you, or to, make you panic, you did not, yield into the blackmail, that you discovered that, you can get around this annoying menace of piracy by giving fresh content, updating it very frequently, so that people feel, that other content that they have got is pretty useless. So I think that's a very good way of looking at piracy, and kind of beating them at their game, and doing it ethically as well. So
I've also noticed that as students, if he collects material, students have this habit of collecting material. They don't actually read material. So they will they will have material collected from 1,000 sources, and they will consider it as their victory. They have joined like thousands of Telegram groups. They will keep collecting new and new material, but they think that, okay, we have got material for free, and it's like it's something, a victory they will wear on their sleeves. But ultimately you have to study that material. You have to now just imagine the psyche of a student who is stealing material. It's just about the habits, just about your attitude. So I've not seen these people succeed in life. Nobody has come to me and said, even just to tease me, nobody has emailed that I got your free content and look, here I am today. I have cleared this exam, or I have become IS in life, or I have become something in life. I've never received any such email.
Right. So, Dr. Gaurav, in your entrepreneurial journey, I'm sure there were moments when you were feeling very challenged. So, could you, take us through, any one of your, dark moments, and what basically motivated you to kind of take them, head on, or overcome them? or
Yeah.
what, not only what quality, I would say, who is that person who basically supported you in these dark times?
There are always people who support you, obviously, but I am more of a person who handles these things myself. Uh, Obviously, in a I mean, somebody has said it that when you are an entrepreneur, you only feel two emotions. One is of euphoria, and one is of, oh my god, I'm going to collapse now. And there is nothing in between. So one day you are like, oh my god, I'm going to become this and that, and next day you are like, oh, will I even survive? So there are these extreme emotions that you face. But obviously, I have had bad times. I told you my offline didn't work. But one thing I always knew, I'm not going back to job. That helps. Definitely that helps. When you have drawn a line that, look, okay, I may do so many things, but this is not what I'm doing at least. So I knew that, and quitting was never for me. I mean, my offline didn't work. I made a YouTube channel, and you know why I made YouTube channel? It is not to turn into an edutech player. It is just so that I can have more enrollments in offline. So I was like, I will showcase how I teach on
Right.
YouTube. And if there are people from in and around Delhi, they will definitely like it and they will come to my center and they will take admission. But then the channel started growing after 6 months like anything. And I never expected this kind of response. And that, I think, was because YouTube was also growing at that pace. And people started calling me from Kerala, from Assam, from different places. But they were not able to come to Delhi because the living and lodging expenses, they were very high, much
Right.
more than my fee. So then I started thinking, how can I give them the content? Then I started with pen drive courses where I would shoot videos, and that decreased my effort also, because I used to record my lecture one time and put it in every pen drive. But I worked on security because I knew it will get pirated. But initial paranoia was there. It's only during this journey I realized that these people who do piracy actually help you in free promotion. Your content is leaked in all these groups and it helps you in free promotion. So I think all those failures, obviously, then there was a time when these big well-funded players, they poached my talent. They poached my all the branded faculty who we had created with a lot of hard work. All that time was there. Then it taught me, because I'm a sort of person, as I said, for me, this personal values and trust and all this is very important. In fact, I did not have a contract even signed with any of the employees, no bond, no severance fee that they have to pay me or anything of that nature. But that experience taught me that, you need to, even if trust is fine, but you still should have safeguards in place. If an employee is leaving you, you have created that brand, then you sign a bond, you do the things in a contract. So even if there have been low moments, they have actually taught me things. But in a startup, I would say those moments when you toil, when you are depressed, when are more than when you actually feel happy and content. And you'll, because today you cannot be content with what you have achieved. Either you are going forwards or you're going backwards.
Right.
If you think that, okay, today I'm making, let's say, any random figure, let's say 2 lakh rupees a month, something, okay, let's say if somebody is saying, okay, I'm happy with 2 lakh a month, then tomorrow you will struggle to make that 2 lakh.
Right.
It's not a given that tomorrow you will make that 2 lakh.
Absolutely. Day one.
So
Yeah.
either you are moving forwards or backwards. And in such a scenario, whether you are moving forwards or backwards, you are always running.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
So these moments are very, very, these moments where you actually become very happy are very less. So that's why I'm saying entrepreneurship is only for the thick-skinned.
Absolutely.
One of my friends, he was so inspired by my journey that he became an entrepreneur. Okay, he actually put down his, papers in his company, and he started a educational app.
Right.
But then he quit after 4 or 5 months, and then he went back again to job. So I told him that if you want such instant gains, then I mean, you may get instant gains, but you should have a certain duration in mind, that you will toil for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, and only then you will go back to either job or academia.
Right.
You can't expect instant gains.
Absolutely. It's a long-term game that you're playing, and you have to be consistent at it. You have to somehow find that motivation from somewhere, from within you, from people around you, from the customers that you benefit. Maybe Mr. Patil, that inspires you every day to work even harder for people like Mr. Patil. So great, Dr. Gaurav. Would there be any last comments that you would like to share with us?
Well, I will just want, as my previous speaker said, even if one person becomes entrepreneur because of me, I can tell you it creates tremendous impact. I think we don't realize how much we are behind other countries. We are too happy when we get a job in Amazon or Google, or we don't realize how much of an advantage they have over us. I think we need to start thinking about wealth creation. The Googles and the Facebooks and the FANG countries, they have to be from India. Some of them at least have to be from India. One thing is very interesting. If you see top 100 richest people of the world, you will find definitely at least 15, 20 Indians. But if you see top 100 brands of the world, you will not find a single Indian brand. This says it all. I mean, people in India, they have become so rich because of other reasons. Maybe it's crony capitalism, or they have not become so big because we have tremendous brands. Name one Indian brand which is global in nature. Just one. We don't have any. So I think we are so far behind, but obviously things are now changing. I see that in IIT Bombay, especially, we have started calling it the Silicon Valley of India. And there are people who are coming up and who know that they can reach those levels, and some have done it, and therefore, like Bhavish or all these alumni, they have done it, and therefore there are others now who realize that fame, or that is achievable through a startup, which will not come in job, come what may.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I think there is a certain adventure. Like if somebody tells me that, okay, you will start your life at this amount, you will end your life at this amount, right? And you have your life rolled in front of you. Even if those beginning and starting amounts are very large, I don't want that life. I want my life to be rolled, there should be something happening every day. There should be, like, I think in a job, you very well know in 99% of the cases where you will start and where you will end up. In most cases, I would say. So today, who knows a vice president of, let's say, a big company? Nobody. And the chances, you're so easily replaceable in a job. It hurts, to be honest, So I think all of these things people are realizing now, that to create impact at a large scale, to live a life fulfilling, entrepreneurship is that journey. And having said that, I think you can still do very well in a job like Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella. Don't become entrepreneur just for the heck of it. Do proper research, but do it.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. In fact, I also had so many takeaways, and congratulations for the very wonderful news with Study IQ being acquired. I wish you a lot of success, even in the future, a lot of fulfillment. And thank you, Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management team. Thank you, Rohan. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session. There were a lot of learnings for us, our audience, from this session. So just on an ending note, I'd like to thank Dr. Gaurav Garg for taking time out of his busy schedule for addressing the audience and inspiring us with his wisdom and knowledge. We were truly honored to have you amongst us, sir. And I'd also like to extend our sincerest gratitude to Ms. Kanchan Dwivedi for being such a wonderful host this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wishes to reach out to me, then my email is very simple, gaurav@studyiq.com. Even apart from if they really wish to start, or they want to send any pitch deck, for example, or anything of that nature, they can do so through the email.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you.